Hello, everyone. Ed DeRosa with you here with Sherry Riddock. Go Philly on Twitter, Canada's foremost expert on all things thoroughbred racing in the U.S. and most importantly for this weekend, Sherry, Canada, because we do have the Queen's Plate. It's not just limited to Ontario breds. I know a lot of people make that mistake. Just have to be born in Canada. Premier race north of the border. I'm thrilled to be up there, and hopefully I'm thrilled to cash a ticket with you.
Yeah, you know what? It looks like we've got a pretty interesting field all lined up for this wonderful Queen's Plate weekend. It looks like the weather could hold, but there might be some rain in the forecast. We've had the driest summer ever. So even if we do get a little bit of rain, don't be alarmed. The course can take it, and so can our turf courses. But definitely, I think there's some chances where we can make some money if you're up for it.
I hope so. All right. There are two stakes races preceded. Well, there's three, but two immediately before the Queen's Plate. They are on turf, so we'll definitely be monitoring the weather conditions for that. All stakes pick 3. There's a pick 5 that ends in the Queen's Plate, a pick 4 that starts in the Queen's Plate. So lots of wagering opportunities there. Before we get to the field, though, I do have a question, and I think I've asked you this before. I see it in the paper all the time. How do you pronounce where Woodbine is?
Woodbine is in Etobicoke. It is not spelled that way, but it is pronounced that way.
Okay, Etobicoke.
And it's subject to interpretation, but the most that I've heard it pronounced is Etobicoke.
Is that a native term, like original settlers? Like here in the States, a lot of our names come from Native Americans. Is that its
You know
origin?
what? In all honesty, I don't know the history of it because I'm from Manitoba.
No, that's right. Yeah. Well,
right. So
all right,
I learned my craft at Assiniboia Downs.
But another name often mispronounced among us Americans, but Etobicoke.
Etobicoke.
All right. Well, thankfully in racing, you only need to know the number when you go to make your wager. So that's what we'll focus on, although we'll definitely be saying the names as we go along here in the Queen's Plate. Before we talk the actual runners, Sherry, just curious, and I have this graphic here about how the 10 furlong races play. There's only been 12 over the last couple years, but pretty telling, I think, if you look in the right-hand column under total, just one gate-to-wire winner in mile and a quarter races since 2019 is the date there. I think this only goes back to 2020. But nevertheless, just the one outside horse went gate-to-wire. 7 closers off the pace or somewhat off the pace, 3+ lengths off. I found in my travels and handicapping of the Tapeta, though, it is pretty fair. And I would just say with races like the Queen's Plate, you have a big field. Usually there's some speed with the bigger fields, and that probably plays into this. But I always go into a race like this thinking you can pretty much win from wherever if you're the best horse.
Yeah, I actually find that a little bit interesting, having a look at the numbers, because I've never really looked at it that way. And I think probably one of the biggest things when handicapping a race like this is you do kind of always want to look where the pace is going to come from, right?
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of misconceptions are that the speedier horses, they're going to rate, right? Everybody looking at it, that's what we're thinking, right? Okay, well, they're going to try to rate them because they know this is the longer distance, that none of them have done it before. So a lot of times the pace that you think is going to show up on the paper does not transpire on the paper, right? And I think that there's that fear of, oh, I don't want to be the one to go out and burn my horse out and not give them a chance.
Yeah.
That being said, this year kind of looks like it could shape up the same way.
Yeah.
And the plate trial kind of did set up that way. Like nobody really wanted to take the lead and be assertive, and Causing Mayhem kind of by default found himself on the lead, whereas I think they were looking for that stalking trip to happen. I don't think that, I think you can win it on the lead. I really do. But I think it takes the right, you have to sit the right trip to be able to do it on the pace. And very rare, like we all get shocked, like, whoa, can't we do it? And then we see them, get swallowed up in the lane by the closers. But our track is fair for the most part. And this is where the rain will come into play. if we do end up getting a little bit of rain, it tends to speed up the Tapeta.
Ah, that's
Right?
good info.
Right. And so
Because it's always listed fast. So when you look through the PPs, you don't even know like, oh, that was a race when it had rained.
right. And I think too, if the jockeys are going to be very concerned about having that clear run down the lane. That's always the biggest thing. And it was a perfect example in the Marine Stakes and in the plate trial. Duke of Love got completely stopped in the lane. And I think that, if he had a different pace scenario, like I think he could have been a lot closer than what he was. So I think a lot of trip handicappers are going to look for certain things like that. And I do, though. I think that you have to be very open-minded. I don't think you can just say, okay, you cannot win on the lead. You can't. Our track will play fair, but I honestly do think that you can win this on the lead.
And I'm just scrolling through the PPs because you mentioned the plate trial. Moira, being a filly, comes out of the Woodbine Oaks.
Correct.
Rondor was in the Marine. So
Yes.
very similar to the Derby. There are some different paths to the plate. Ultimately, it seems like maybe the plate trial the most popular. But do you have any sense of which of these races was the strongest this year?
I think the Oaks, in all honesty, was the strongest. And I know there's going to be a lot of talk about Moira, who is our Queen's Plate favorite, morning line favorite, I should say. And the perception, or the rumblings that I'm hearing, is that she hasn't really faced a lot of competition, and that this is going to be the deepest field that she's faced. Well, in all honesty, that's the truth for all of them, right? It is. It's true.
Yeah.
Because you know what, the people that raced in the Mazarine not necessarily came back to run in the plate trial. So they're all kind of, we're just going to kind of see how they all fit together.
Right.
Right.
And they're all going a mile and a quarter for the first time.
And they're all going a mile and a quarter, which is a question for all of them. So, I think that there's people, all of the races are important. All of the races that got them to this point are important. And it's just a matter of, what you feel as a handicapper, what your advantage is going to be, and what you saw that maybe somebody else didn't, where you think you can have an advantage over somebody else.
Well, let's start with Moira, morning line favorite, a host of owners, bred by Stronach Adina Springs, by Go Sapper, so soft spot for me, definitely one of my faves. Love the breeding for going a route of ground. And you mentioned the class situation with the Woodbine Oaks, but I do see that Sister Seagull, I'm assuming that is abbreviated, but more importantly, I see it's italicized, which means she won next out. So that's kind of interesting. What can you tell us just about her winning next out? And Moira, it does seem like she will have pace to chase again.
Sister Seagull, I'll touch on her first. She had every reason to lose her last race. She fought on, and it was a small field. It was five horse field. And she ended up, they pinned her on the rail, and she didn't have room in the lane. She fought so gamely for that win. And I know that she was a long way back to Moira, but everybody was a long way back to Moira. And she also had trouble in that trip. But the grit that she showed, I was like, okay, she's a racehorse. She's a serious racehorse. To me, that really flatters Moira. And I think that Moira doesn't necessarily need to be a closer either. She just distanced the field. So it looked like, no, and that's the truth. She doesn't necessarily need to be a closer. She can sit mid-pack, no problem. It's just that that's where she was that day. And now let's remember, she had all kinds of pre-race antics before the Woodbine Oaks, Moira. She lost both her hind shoes. And so she ran with no shoes. She was amped up. There was all kinds of things that took place. And she was so dominant. If you were ever to pick against her, how we tend to look at behavior and be like, oh, maybe this is a bad sign. If there was any reason that she would not perform at her best, or that she was a play against, that would have been the race. And there was a lot of people that were mulling around because I was on site that day, and a lot of people were just like, oh boy, and we paid really close attention to her, and she had the performance like that blew our minds. So as we know, good racehorses overcome obstacles. To me, she passed that test with flying colors.
That's
And I
good to
think
know.
maybe a lot of people that look at that race, and that's why I say too, like there's a lot of circumstances, I think, than just looking at, okay, she won by 10 lengths. She had every reason to lose that day. And she came out and did the complete opposite and just destroyed the field. Convincingly. And wrapped up and galloped out, so to me, that just showed her class. And I loved every minute of it. So I think she really warrants favoritism in here.
Okay. And yeah, I do think she'll be favored, although I also think it's her, Rondor, and then probably a few, and then you have the longest shots on the board, obviously. And with Rondor, by Oxbow, am I saying that right, by the way?
Yes, Rondor.
Rondor, okay, so not the rolling D, more a hard D. Rondor, who was Hernandez's. Did he have a choice?
Yes.
So he chooses
He
Moira,
chose Moira.
another feather in that Phillies cap. But it's interesting looking at the pedigree stats. Oxbow, who won the Preakness, and certainly a distance type as a 3-year-old, actually has not had many distance types with his progeny. And the dam side doesn't necessarily scream a mile and a quarter to me either. And this one has only gone 8.5 furlongs, whereas a lot of others in the race have gone 9. Those are the negatives in my mind. The positives, gets Flavian Pratt, and speed numbers wise certainly looks as fast as any, if not just purely the fastest other than Moira. So when I see that a horse like that is not the favorite, I'm somewhat interested. And if the money just pours in on Moira, the story, the filly, etc., maybe this one might be worth playing. And I was thinking before we chatted, Sherry, that Rondor would definitely have a pace advantage over the favorite, but you say, oh, not so fast. She could be closer if need be. So I think this is a really interesting dynamic between these two. I do think the race comes down to either one.
I think you're correct. The only thing that really has me concerned and cause for pause with Rondor is the 7 weeks off.
Yeah, was there an excuse in terms of why he didn't make the plate trial?
They didn't want the plate trial. He ran a very big race in the Mazarine. Now, things didn't really go his way in the Mazarine, and I know that he won in a very dominating fashion, but there was a lot of congestion going into the first turn. He didn't like it. It was and lucky for him, this is what a positive to him. He showed his adaptability, where the jockey just pushed him through it and said, okay, I don't want to get in any trouble. We're going to go closer to the lead. And he ended up, like, if you look at his running lines, that's the closest that he's ever been on the pace.
Yeah.
Right? Which showed a completely different dynamic. Like, nobody was expecting him to do that. Nobody. Right? So that was interesting. Plus, that was his first time stretching out. Right? So I honestly don't really know what to make of that race. I don't know. Like, it was good. Yes, eye-catching for sure. Nobody made up ground on him. He was strong. He was strong. He was, he changed his whole racing style that day. He's not going to get that same setup in this one. And he's going longer, and he's having 7 weeks off. So I have a lot of questions with him. Do I think he's talented? Absolutely. Absolutely. Do I think he's going to be able to challenge Moira? I don't think so. I think there's going to be others that I will probably use underneath, and I might use Rondor more on the superfecta side. And I think that we will get a little bit more of a price on Moira because everybody's going to look to Rondor to try to get that price play.
Right. And then they end up closer together. Yeah. Which on the line, they are close 5-2 and 3-1. But yeah, good information. And obviously the 7 weeks off certainly would be a complete non-starter for me for Kentucky Derby horse. Definitely pause here as well. And part of that story is ran on July 2nd and did not have another workout for 3 weeks after that, which is somewhat atypical. I mean, horses are usually back within 2 weeks. So you might say, well, it's just another week. But, when you're getting horses ready for these big premier races, that sticks out to me. So it's certainly worth considering. So we've talked about two of the prep races. We haven't gotten to the one that has the most horses coming out of it. And the winner is potentially juicy 8-1 on the morning line. That's Surf for Sure, and very similar to the other two prep winners we've talked about. Rondor a little closer last out, but has been mid-pack. Moira was farther back before she basically slingshotted the field and won by 10. Surf for Sure, though, similar running style in his plate trial win, just kind of sat mid-pack, and then kicked away and won by 2. Overall, though, can anyone turn the tables on Surf for Sure from the plate trial? How deep is that race?
Surf for Sure, firstly, I'm going to say is massive. He's huge. He's 17.2 hands. Huge, right? He was very much overlooked, and I'm still kicking myself for that in the plate trial, actually, because we all liked him the race prior. There was a lot of talk with him coming out of Gulfstream Park with that maiden special weight that he won, because really that day he had a lot against him, and he overcame and he ended up powering through. And we know that those races are pretty tough at Gulfstream during the championship meet. So when he came here, we all were very excited to see him in the Queenston, and he didn't run a lick. So that really threw us all off as handicappers, because, or just even breaking down the races, we were like, what happened? But not realizing that he doesn't want to do those races. He's a router. He's a distance guy, right? So if you look back, that was the other race that he won, was when he went a distance. So he's prime sitting on a peak effort as far as I'm concerned. I'm definitely using him underneath. I was fooled once by him. I'm not going to be fooled twice. And, he's making his third start off a layoff since coming here. And, I honestly think he's more dangerous to me than Rondor at the moment. I have him underneath Moira. And Moira as well. This is another thing I just want to mention, that I think they targeted this race for her all along. She's making her third start off of the year. So They basically have been prepping her for this. This was their goal. So I think she's going to be ready. I think Surf for Sure is extremely dangerous. Rondor, I completely understand, just so that I can sum up those three so far.
Yeah. Now, the three we've talked about, the prep winners, none of which I think we'd all be, I guess, somewhat surprised if either one of them were on the lead. I think one could be close, especially what you said about Moira, maybe a little closer than we saw last time. But in terms of on the lead, who's setting the pace that first quarter mile past the stands? Is it causing mayhem? Is it Ironstone? I kind of thought it would be one of those two. Is there anyone else I'm overlooking that could be a speed influence?
I'm with you. I took a really good look at this yesterday, after the plate draw. And I think causing mayhem from that outside post is going to go. I think they will try to get him to stalk, because that was the initial goal in the previous race. However, nobody ended up taking that lead. Now, for him, I think he's very dangerous if he is left alone on the lead, because he looked beaten twice in that last race, and he came back and fought to get that third, even though Surf for Sure and Holler Dreams finished ahead of him. A lot of times when horses come in here, their first run on the Tapeta surface is almost like a trial period. Mm-hmm. And he handled that pretty good. I think he also has a chance to really improve second time out and stretching out even a little bit further. And this is where I was talking about earlier, where, the Mingster maybe could go up there if he wanted to, or Ironstone. Ironstone was so ranked last time, and unfortunately he was his own worst enemy, that I really think they are going to try to rate him. I think they're going to try to rate the Mingster. Thus, I can see Causing Mayhem totally inheriting the lead, but I think he is going to be very dangerous if nobody goes with him.
I thought it was interesting looking at Kimura getting back on this one. The only time he was aboard in the Queenston, was able to rate from the rail, got a decent stalking trip, and then came up short of neck. But that was, in my mind, just looking at the PPs, by far Ironstone's best race, and he gets reunited with that jockey, and you get 12-1. The Pletcher horse, Sherry, Causing Mayhem, agree with all you say. I was actually like, when they drew the race and your first pass through the PPs, I was like, oh, this could be a live long shot. And then the morning line comes out and it's 6-1, and it's kind of like, well, that's not that great. 6-1. I mean, I'd like to cash, but I was kind of thinking, might be a bigger price as a speed threat. So I'm kind of eager to see where the board falls on Causing Mayhem.
Right. Yeah.
But I definitely think Ironstone, bullet work, inside draw, jockey back aboard who's ridden this horse the best he's been ridden. Maybe a win is asking too much, but wouldn't mind that being one of the ones I use to spice up the exotics.
Yeah, you know what? I had a really good look at him yesterday, and I saw Kimura at the draw, and it's fantastic to see him back. For those that don't know, he suffered an injury a few weeks ago, and it was questionable if he would even be able to come back to it. So I think it's fabulous that he gets to ride this weekend, firstly. And then secondly, that in the Marine, I really think that you can toss Ironstone's race. He is a beautiful specimen of a horse, and he works like a machine. If he can ever get it all put together, he is going to be phenomenal. It's just that he has to put it all together, as do many of them. Yep. But he was so rank in that last race. Like, honestly, for him to even hold on to third was incredible, because he was just all over. And it was really unfortunate, because I was hoping to see a difference out of him, because he is going to be going longer and he's going to need to harness that. Right. So I think that's why you're going to be getting that price on him, because A, it's a distance question, right? And B, he just was so off kilter in his last one that I think it just made pause for people like, okay, he needs to mature a little bit more maybe before we can put him in the serious discussion.
All right. And then you've touched on this horse a bit, and I'll bring this back up. But the Mingster at 10-1, I would say I'd be in the interested category, especially under the logicals. But what happened last time at 9-5 in the plate trial? I mean, undefeated, just had the look of a good one, and got bet like it last out, but faded to sixth. Maybe one of those situations I should go back and watch, because the chart comment over here, pulled 3-4 wide, just kind of suggests maybe a little rank as well. That outside post probably didn't do him much favors. Better drawn here. Jockey sticks for the trainer, who actually has really good numbers in these types of situations. So I don't know, 10-1 kind of has me thinking maybe.
I picked him last out, so maybe it was my fault that he lost. I actually singled him on everything. So to me, that was a little bit of a crushing defeat. But, one thing that again, I'll touch on is we've had a very hot, dry summer. Some horses do not perform very well in the heat. And I was sitting next to the connections of the Mingster yesterday at the draw. And the trainer, Danny Vella, had mentioned that he really struggled in the heat that day. So for me, I think that if I was to give any horse a pass, and I've been tossing back and forth between Ironstone and Mingster, who I would like to include on my underneath tickets, I think that he really has a possibility to come back and run well. Do I think he can win? I'm not really sure about that. But I really think that he is a better horse than what that race showed. He was ranked going into the first turn. And that, like I said, that first turn on that that race was a disaster for many. And I think that he ended up getting shuffled wide. He was hot, he was agitated, and it really just took everything out of him that day. It's the one of the more disappointing races that I've actually seen out of one of our contenders. But he's been working well. And another strike against him is that he's the winner of the Coronation Futurity. And I believe that we have our comments in the racing forum, Ron and I, like no horse has come back to won that in the Queen's Plate since 1976 or something like that. So he's got this little purse on him that, I think
because I see a horse by English Channel out of a flatter mare and think, man, he won his debut going 6.5. Then off the layoff, his 3-year-old debut, one going 7. So there's, some brilliance there, but also won a stake going 9 as a 2-year-old, which for like early season Kentucky Derby type stuff, I don't love when horses go 9 furlongs as a 2-year-old, but I mean, now we're into August, so to me that says, there was stamina there even then, and and then the plate trial egg. But if you're a believer, that just means you get a great price now, because if he had won the plate trial, like you would think a 9 to 5 should, you'd be looking at probably 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 here with Moira. So,
and he has every reason to bounce back, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I would not be shocked at all to see him perform well, because he's been consistent, it's just, I think that day, everything just didn't pan out well for him that day.
Right.
So if you are looking for someone underneath, I would not shy away from him at all. I would love to see him bounce back. The question again is, can he just settle? Right?
Well,
can he settle?
You get 10 to 1 to find out.
And you know what? It isn't supposed to be blazing hot Sunday.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that really adds more of a fair playing field, because it is, we have been like ridiculously hot, and it does take a lot out of some contenders. Like I've seen it over the years, actually, that it is something you have to factor in. Some horses just do not manage the heat well.
So it is interesting. 11 horses. There's the top 2 choices, 5 to 2 and 3 to 1. Then another 6 who are all between, looks like 5 and 12 to 1. And then there's 3 who are 30 to 1, who I'm guessing normally when I see that means they probably should be 100 to 1. But if for whatever reason one of them is able to even crash the superfecta, it could really blow things up. Doesn't mean one of them has to, but I will ask, among Shamator, Dancing in Denial, and Huntmaster, is either one of those a threat to clunk up, stick around, whatever, to really help blow things up underneath?
Yeah, I think that one of them actually can. And for me, it's Huntmaster.
Right.
Huntmaster, and like on paper, you think, wow, like this is a big step up for him. Never faced stakes competition.
Right.
But here's the thing. I've watched both of his races this year. Super impressive on the first one in June. Super impressive, going 7 furlongs, rated, beautiful, very professional debut. His second race out, where they stretched him out, he ran against older company, right? He hopped at the break, totally blew it, right? Was a couple lengths back, came closing like a train down the lane, and just missed to Canadian Pharaoh. Canadian Pharaoh is actually going to be running in the Turf Endurance Series in race 7 on Queen's Plate Day. So if you want any indication of the form of this fellow, I would highly recommend to watch that race. But the reason why I like him is because he's like this sneaky new one, right?
Sure.
And I think he has the most potential to move forward. He's bred to run all day. And, I think he's making his 3rd start of the year. they also, I believe, if they felt he was worthy to be in there, they put him in here. So I think they've been very cautious with him. They made sure that they have a fresh horse going into the plate. He went the 7 furlongs, then they stretched him out. Now they're going to stretch him out again. I think it's really a nice campaign that they've done for him. And I think that he could be a little bit dangerous. And it doesn't hurt that Emma Jane is up. Emma rode his sire, Hunter's Bay, all the time too, who is out of Ghost Zapper.
All right. Now, I do feel like, I mean, obviously it's great to pick a winner, and we'd love to, whoever we have on top, which I think sounds like it'll be Moira for you. But I think if you're able to say, hey, this horse has a shot to be in the mix at 30, maybe 50 to 1, depending on how they actually bet the race, that could be just as lucrative as any other opinion. So I'm glad I asked, because that'd be a juicy one, Sherry.
Yeah, and I think he's very much going to be overlooked because on paper, it's just like, wow. But I saw his last race and it was phenomenal. It was very eye-catching. And will he have to step up? Absolutely, they all will. But I know that he's got the breeding that the distance isn't going to be an issue for him. So if he wants to just sit mid-pack, bide his time, love that Emma's on him. And, like Kimura usually rides this horse. Kimura obviously chose to be on Ironstone, but that doesn't mean that there's, anything wrong with it.
No. I mean, that Ironstone's been in stakes. This horse hasn't. So that to me makes sense. Like, you don't even question, of course. Whereas with like Hernandez, where he had a choice between more.
Yeah, that's completely different.
Then you're kind of like, okay, he made a choice, and there might be something to that. All right. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but top pick in the plate.
I'm going to go Team Moira.
I came into this video thinking I was going to pick Rondor, but after discussing with you, I feel like that might not be the best pick, especially it's the clear second choice. Am I right in sort of forecasting the betting? No one else is going to take more money than him except Moira, correct?
You know who I think is going to actually take some money is Duke of Love.
Really?
I think there's going to be some questions.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that one much, and he is 5 to 1.
I think there's going to be some questions with Rondor. And don't get me wrong, like I think Rondor is a very nice racehorse, but I think that he's got some more questions than some others do. And the reason why I think Duke of Love is going to end up taking a lot of money, A, he's out of my racehorse Silks, right? They always take money.
They do, yeah.
Right? B, he had one of the toughest trips that I've probably seen all year in his last out. He literally was stopped right in the lane and had nowhere to go. But when he found room, he came back through and kicked on. And that race is very deceiving. And I think that a lot of trip handicappers or a lot of people that saw that race will bet him back and think of him as a threat. Because unfortunately, we didn't get to actually see him closing into Sir for Sure and Hall of Dreams that day.
Right.
So I think that he's going to be the sneaky play for a lot of people that were watching that race. And the thing with me, why I'm on the fence with him is because he's raced a lot more than some of the others. And so that just gives me a little bit of pause to think like, okay, you know what? And it just could be that he's figuring things out. And, he was second to Rondor that one day. What was that? That was in the Marine. He was second to the runaway Rondor. Yeah. But again, I just really have a hard time gauging that race that Rondor won that way. I don't know if he's going to try to sit more in the pace, if he's going to go far back. And to me, I still think distance could be an issue for him. So that's my question. But Duke of Love, obviously, I think he can get the distance. So I think he's going to take a lot more money, which in turn will work for our Causing Mayhem. I think we might get more money on Causing Mayhem than you think, unless he takes some of the American wagering, which is quite possible.
Yeah, I mean, Pletcher certainly will catch some eyes, but then not like Pletcher sending any of his jocks up there either.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure he uses Gallardo and Tampa, like he's not unfamiliar with them, but that kind of stuck out to me.
This is Causing Mayhem's fourth different jockey in 4 races.
Yeah, that's
right. So I think you will see him kind of float up. And if, given the statistics you showed, 1 winner on the pace. So I think a lot of people could dismiss him. And I think we might end up getting a price for him. But I do think even if he doesn't win, I for sure think he's going to hang around, because if he hung around in that race, he was pushed the whole way by Dancing in Denial, and Dancing in Denial ended up fading to 5th.
right.
And he just kept fighting and fighting. So he showed a lot of that grit and a lot of that heart that I like to see, especially going longer.
All right. Well, I think it'll come down to price for me after distilling all these discussion points. I would say if Moira is 5-2, that probably is not a bad price on her. The Woodbine Oaks, said it at the top. We'll say it to close it out. I agree with you. To me, that was the best performance that we've seen from any of these entrants. So a repeat by Go Sapper, no reason to think it can't happen at a mile and a quarter. She gets 5 pounds from the rest. Adds up to me that she's the most likely winner. I came into talking worried that she'll be like even money or something like that, and I definitely don't want to take that kind of price against this group. But we've laid out some reasons the others might take money, so 5-2 would be nice, but probably 2-1 probably more realistic.
Even 2-1 would be fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, I agree.
I would take 2-1.
Even money is that's kind of where I start thinking, man, does she really win this half the time? I mean, maybe after the race we'll say yes, but going in, no. But to the point of underneath horses, though, Ironstone, for me, I just really interested in just kind of him being the one that, similar to what we talked about with Causing Mayhem, just, is out there and can't stay on to get the win. Moira comes and gets him, but I do think can stay the trip and, just kind of be an even second or third and complete the exotic. So Ironstone definitely a key for me underneath some others. And I think Moira, if, she's not just crazy over bet, wins the plate.
I agree with you. But, I think there's one horse that we didn't touch on that I think everybody, you might want to just keep your eye on too, is Hall of Dreams from the One Post. We didn't really talk about Hall of Dreams. Patrick Husband's going to be up for Mark Cassidy. And Hall of Dreams last out was moving with his stablemate, Sir For Sure, and there was a little bit of bumping going on in the lane. And they did an inquiry and they didn't do anything about it. But this horse has just been super consistent and has been in the top 3 his last 3 races. And if Patrick is sticking with him, that always gives you something to think about as well. And he's, I believe, 12-1 morning line, something like that.
Yep, 12-1.
Right? And he was second to Sir For Sure, and Causing Mayhem finished in behind him. So, this is where it's going to be important which reference you're going to use for capping trips for the Queen's Plate. Like if you like Sir For Sure, or if you like Sir For Sure, well, then you definitely need to look at Hall of Dreams and Causing Mayhem as well. Right? Yeah. So I think Hall of Dreams, he will take some Patrick Husband's money, but Sir For Sure just kind of had a little bit more pep in his step in the lane than Hall of Dreams did. But he's always been around, and he seems to just, he looks like he's going to close, and he might get the right trip. He might sit the right trip. So I wouldn't think twice about using him underneath either, just to give you another one to think about.
Right. Does people betting Patrick blindly mean that bettors are married to husbands?
I opened that one up for you, right?
You did. That was.
You're welcome.
That was a beach ball on the tee. I had to swing at it. No, I think this is a lot of times you look through a race and the favorite makes a lot of sense, and you kind of worry about where the opportunity is. But I think with the 11 horse field, obviously the 10 furlongs can be an equalizer, so to speak. But uh, I'd I'd be shocked if the trifecta is the top four choices. Like,
Yeah.
there are other horses in here who can be in the mix. So to me, anytime, on the big race day, you get the casual fans out, which is great. Love to see it. But they bet a particular way, and if you're able to zig a little bit where they're zagging with the bigger fields, it comes up big. So yeah, I'm looking forward to taking a swing.
Well, when I first looked at it, if I take Moira out, this is a very level playing field. I just think, and that's my personal opinion, is I just think she stands up a little bit above the rest, and I don't even think we've seen the best of her yet. But if we remove her from the race, I think this is a total wide open race.
Well, and that's a great point, because even, like, let's say you did take her out, it's still a 10 horse race where now you have questions about who would be Rondor. Okay, there's some question marks there. If he took the most money out of the other 10, Duke of Love obviously makes sense, but, some question marks there. Causing mayhems on the outside would be in the mix. So, yeah, I mean, that's exactly
for sure. Any of them.
Yeah.
Any of them, right? So if you remove Moira, it just changes the whole race. And I think a lot of people maybe want to look at handicapping in that way too. Like for myself, I'm singling and like the pick fives and everything. I feel that confident with her. I'm not backing anything up. I'm like going all the way.
All right.
All the way with her. We'll see. And you'll be able to see on Sunday in my face how well it's going.
Yep. We'll see about the quarter pole for whether she's in with the shot or not. And just to remind, pick 5 ends with the Queen's Plate. Pick 4 begins with the Queen's Plate. And there's also a pick 5 race 9. So races 9 and 10, a part of 2 pick 5s. And I'm sure there's some guaranteed pools. We'll have more information on that. Horse Racing Nation. Any closing thoughts, Sherry?
And there's a late pick 3 get out.
Yes, of course. There's a race 13 get out. Which is probably like 7:30?
Yeah, 7:35 is the last post. There's a couple of nice stake races prior. I think that we're in for a really great race. I hope that everybody can tune in, and I hope that you make some money however you choose to play it. I hope that we've given some good insight as to all of the contenders, that we can help people make informed decisions on how they want to play it. And I wish everybody the best of luck. I look forward to seeing you for the first time in a very long time, since the COVID days.
Yeah, the 19 Belmont, I think.
I know. I can't even believe the time has gone by so quickly. I think that, everybody, I just want to get home safe. And I hope that we have just a fantastic day.
All right. Now, I'll drink to that. And a Bloody Caesar, which is definitely I get to enjoy in Canada. Not as popular.
Even said Caesar. I'm very impressed.
Yeah. No, what do they do differently? It's the Clamato juice, right?
Yes, not tomato juice. Yeah. Right. And you can probably have a roast beef sandwich.
Right. Is that open? Because last year it wasn't, right?
It should be open this year.
Okay.
I would
Very
think
good.
So. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm excited for that. And we will see you Saturday. A few stakes that day, and Queen's Plate Sunday.
Sounds perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was great talking with you.
All right. Go Philly on Twitter. Follow her. Follow us, or don't. Hopefully someone out there makes some money. But it's Queen's Plate Sunday at Woodbine. Good luck.